Where's the link for the YouTube? Do you have the YouTube link?
Yes. Hey everyone, by the way. Happy Friday. I'm glad you're watching. Different time than usual. We're going to officially roll the intro in just a minute or two. As soon as I give Rodrigo the link to share. I'll send it to you on Twitter. How about that?
Sure.
Because I did tag, I did have it set up to tag you, but then it was like right when I sent it, it was like, I'll remove the tag just in case he doesn't end up showing up, and I don't want to do false advertising.
Got it.
Where is it? Okay. Well, anyway, I hope everyone's had a great Friday so far. It's not much of a Friday yet.
Thanks for accommodating the earlier time. For everybody watching and not knowing me, I'm Sven, and I'm based in Berlin, Germany. So for me, it's already late afternoon, and Joel was kind enough to move it forward a little bit, so it doesn't have to get too late into the night for me.
Yes,
And
I have no problem doing
appreciate
shows
it.
at different times. I try not to move for this show because it's been at the same time for years straight, and people get used to it, and so it's kind of like a typical thing. But seeing we have a few extra people, we have enough people to where I think that, the time zone always messed up some people, I think, who are because there's Dash people all over the world, right? There's obviously people, like right now it's about 7 in the morning in the Western U.S., so those people are not watching, I'm sure. And then you get people in, say, like Central and Eastern Europe, who it's now starting to become evening right now. But during the traditional podcast, it would be like noon Western U.S. time, and then later in Europe, and then especially late on a Friday night when people have like lives. At least I'd hope they have lives. So yeah, it's good stuff. Just keep checking, see if more people join. Yeah, everyone seems to be in here. All right, so I'm going to go roll the intro graphic and then just actually officially start. All right, ready and go. So, hey everyone, officially welcome. Happy Friday. This is the Dash Podcast, I believe number 202. Been doing a lot of these over the years. I'm joined by the wonderful members of the Dash Investment Foundation, the supervisors Sven and Rodrigo. Although Rodrigo's...
Hi, everyone.
There we go. There's the camera again. And I've had Rodrigo on the podcast many times, but this is Sven's first experience. So everyone say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Good to be back here, Joel.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in Dash, of course, as always. And one of the most promising things for Dash over the years has been the Dash Investment Foundation. And during the last bull market especially, there was a lot of attention, a lot of funding, a lot of stuff like that just coming towards the DIF. And now during this, we're kind of getting out of the bear market now. But during the bear market, there was just a lot of not a lot going on because there's not a lot of extra money to be sending to the DIF to do a bunch of things. And so it'd be I'm sure the community would be very happy to see like a good update on like what's going on and things, and then discuss some strategy and things like that moving forward. And so I would like to remind everyone who's in my specific Discord, you can comment on the in the Dash Podcast channel to get a live super chat. In fact, let me see. One time said hi from West Coast USA. So yes.
Oh wow, there you go. It's 7 a.m. Like what? 7:20.
Yes.
Early rise.
One time is up early. He's a good dude. So leave comments in there. I will look at other live chat questions if we run out of them, but that's the way to go. All right, so the first order of business. First off, what's been going on in the diff lately? How have you guys been? Just a general update on like the state of things.
Yeah, sure. As most people probably noticed, we quieted down a little bit when the bear market and the crypto winter really hit sometime early or mid last year. We figured that it wouldn't make much sense to drain the Dash treasury and then sell the Dash that we acquire that way at very unfavorable rates for USD. And for the most part, we do keep most of our holdings and our cash holdings in USD because that's what we need for investments. And so at some point we stopped we stopped publishing treasury proposals, right? We stopped asking for new funding. Mm-hmm. That doesn't really mean the diff has gone away or stopped our activity or something. We did slow down our meeting cycle to about once a month now, when it used to be once a week. And things slowed down a little bit, but
there was a point we were having 3 times a week meetings, remember?
Wow. Oh yeah, that did happen sometimes when we had we had pitches to watch and something urgent came up. Yeah, that did happen. But so since last summer, it's been quieted down quite a bit. But that's not to say that we're going anywhere or we're going away. Our investments are still there. They're still live, and I guess we'll come to it in a minute. I'm sure people have questions, or I've seen a question already about our portfolio. I think we're doing pretty well, but we haven't really engaged in new deal sourcing in the last few months. Overall, when you ask, what's going on, I think what is probably the most difficult part for us is that we are all working here as volunteers. That means we're spending free time on it. Most of us, actually pretty much all of us, have other jobs and families and other priorities in their lives. And we're doing the diff supervisor role as a hobby on top of it for free. We're not getting paid for anything. And so sometimes I have the impression that people think like this diff is this mysterious, super professional organization where people are hunching over trading screens all day and buy and sell and moving millions around left and right. And that's just not really how it is in reality. The reality should be, ideally, the way it was envisioned at some point, is that supervisors would supervise, that we meet like once a month or maybe even just once a quarter to make sure things are running smoothly. And otherwise, the day-to-day business is being taken care of by hired employees, by professional fund managers and such. And our funding situation has never been anywhere near the level where we could afford to do that. My understanding was when the diff first started out, long before I joined, there was a short period where they had some hired employees, but it was quickly put aside because it just, the cost situation didn't allow for that. And so what that means that we as supervisors, we have to do everything ourselves. If it's, updating the website, doing accounting, portfolio, watching pitches, deal sourcing, communicating with the community, posting funding proposals, like everything that comes along is with us on and has to be taken care of in our free time. And that's why things like the election, for example, sometimes just end up sliding because we are 6 supervisors. Also, they're equal. We're 6 equal. There's no one boss that can dictate other people like you do this and the deadline is next week Friday. It's not like that. Like, you have sometimes 6 people, and the more people you have, the harder sometimes it is to get things done, because if everybody is responsible for something, sometimes at the end nobody is responsible. And so I think that's what kind of happened with the election. So it just kept dragging on, and luckily now it's finally gone through. It looks like we will have 2 new supervisors coming in. Congratulations to Jared and Justin. We will get you through the KYC process shortly, and then onboard you as new supervisors, and hopefully we'll get some help on all these things that need to be done. For example, our website is urgently in desperate need of an update. So things like that.
Yeah, maintain a few other things as well that Sven mentioned that I wanna bring it up as well. Maintaining social media, video production, graphics, artwork, podcast, video, audio. This is, we did as much as we could with the time we had, but overall, if we put it together, let's see, we had to pause operation because of funds, right? And as Von mentioned, but even knowing that we work when we can as volunteers, we met in different backgrounds. We are a bunch of guys with no experience of managing a fund. I think 1 or 2 guys had some experience. And even with that, with no money, no experience, we do it whenever we can. We can give ourselves A+ for the DIF, because all of the projects, if not most of the projects, if not all of the projects we brought in, and we decided to take a little bit of money and invest, are doing extremely well. Extremely well. And for example, the one that we did about the Bitfi in Brazil, the wallet, they got an investment from the Central Bank of Brazil.
Wow. That's
and
big.
We got there first. We have a little part. It's small. It's a small chunk. 88i, Edge Wallet, CrayPay, or now Iona, Valkyrie, maybe one other project. Sven, help me out here. That
So
with our experience and what the tools we had were limited, and our capacity, we managed to pick excellent projects that are doing extremely well.
Yeah, I did see the question about our portfolio and our assets. So I have it down here in my very nice Dash notebook.
I don't have one of those. I need one.
So let me run through this real quick. So we have an investment in Quadency. And by the way, all our investments, to be very conservative, are on our books at cost value. That means the money that we actually paid for the investment. Some of these, for all practical purposes, are worth more now than what we paid, and we have quite specific data or information that some of our investments are doing very, very well, as we just heard. And I can't really disclose specific details on those yet, because it's not public, and I don't want to jump the gun and get in the way of discussions and negotiations that may still be ongoing before everything is done and dusted and the signatures are under the contracts.
Yeah, it's not even about the numbers as well, but all of the companies that we public invest, those companies already mentioned that other companies also jump into their investment, which means and bigger, way bigger companies, which means we were on the right track before the big fish. Sorry, Sven, go ahead.
No, it's just sure, no problem. So keep in mind the numbers I'm giving you are the original cost figures, money that we paid. So Quadency, 100K. All of this is in US dollars, right? Denominated USD. So Quadency, 100K. Valkyrie, 100K. We remember Valkyrie was the company that did set up the Dash Trust, and then unfortunately had to close it down because nobody or very few people actually put money into the Dash Trust. But so we lost the Dash Trust, but we still have a share in Valkyrie as a company, and they actually offered to buy out our shares at sometime mid last year, fall last year, at unfavorable rates. And unsolicited also. So we declined that offer. We kept our share there because we are quite sure that there's more in there. So then Ionia, that's
So for a
the
real quick aside on just Valkyrie,
yep.
Since the sale, since the proposed buyback, I guess, have the shares done better than they were previously? As in, was it in the short term at least? Was it the right decision to not sell?
Well, it's you got to keep in mind that these private equity investments are in equity that's not traded anywhere. So there is no stock market where I can look up what's a share of Valkyrie worth today.
Yeah.
It is worth as much as a buyer is willing to pay. And as long as Valkyrie doesn't have a new buyer who is willing to do another financing round for them or is willing to buy them out at whatever valuation, we can kind of stick the thumb in the air and think what it might be worth, but we don't really have exact figures to go by. So we're due an update from Valkyrie. It's sort of end of year reporting to see how their business is going in general, and from that we can deduce and where they stand and how they're doing. But I don't have any new valuation to share as of today there for Valkyrie.
Okay.
So
that makes sense. So sorry,
going
continue
further
on.
down to
Ionia.
So yeah, Ionia. So that's the company behind CrayPay, which is the company behind Dash Direct. Everybody who's been around Dash will know them. We have an investment of 300K or a little bit over 300K in total. That's actually comprised of two tranches. We had 200K at first, and then we put in another 100K in the second quarter of last year. So now we have a total of 300 plus another 50K in debt. So that's not equity, that's owed to us. Then we have 88i. Rodrigo just mentioned 350K. We have BitFi 150K, Coin Routes 150K, and the Edge wallet at 300K. So we're in the process right now of most of them to get the end of year reporting and a business update to see how things are going in general, new accounts and so on. But we do have I'm not sure how far I want to lean out of the window, but at least for one of these companies that I just walked through, not Valkyrie we talked about separately, but another one, we did have there is a deal in the works that we are aware of, where a private equity company came in and offered to buy out the shares of that company at a valuation that is roughly 4 times our basically our shares would be worth 4 times of what we invested.
Well, that's nice.
In the context of that buyout, they did offer to buy out previous investors, however, not at 4 times of what we paid in. They offered to buy us out at a smaller at a smaller value, but they were buying. They would value the company at a total valuation that would make our share worth roughly 4 times what we paid in. So we declined the offer to get paid out, similar to as with Valkyrie, because we didn't see that we should that we should get paid less than what that private equity company is willing to pay overall for that company. I gotta be careful that I don't spill the name of the company.
Yeah.
But I think in overall we all felt it's a very good validation of our concept. The fact that we are that it works. We are looking forward.
It takes time to develop everything. because
Exactly.
a lot of people were expecting results from the diff right away, and the results from the diff will come maybe in 2 to 3 years.
Exactly. Yeah, that's another thing. That's another thing that looking through the forum and Discord, that I sometimes see people getting impatient, and I get a sense they might not really understand how angel investing or VC investing works. When you're investing in startups, right? And they say, well, we need money. We need money to buy back Dash and support the Dash price in the market. And I'm like, that would be the worst thing to do. Like, first of all, we can't just willy-nilly, like, drop these companies that we invested in. We are contractually obligated to keep our equity in those companies. So that's one thing. We couldn't even legally just demand it back. We could potentially sell it if we find another seller. If you find another buyer for these shares, but these are, for the most part, relatively early stage startup companies, or in very early growth stage companies, and you can't support one of these entrepreneurs, one of these companies today, giving them money to hire their team and to grow their business, and then 3 months later, because now you suddenly need money, you pull the carpet out from under their feet. It doesn't work that way. So you have to stick with the company. You have to help them grow, and it's also the nature of this business that typically many, if not most, of these investments will fail. And failure does not necessarily mean a total loss of what you invested, although even that could happen. It could also mean you get less money out than what you put in. And only a very small amount of the companies that you would typically invest in as an angel investor becomes an outsized success. But those outsized successes, they carry the whole shebang, right? They carry everything. They make it worth for everything. And so far, looking at our books and the prospects that we have at potential buyouts, that concept has been validated for us, even though I'm unfortunately not really at liberty yet to disclose specific numbers. But it's looking at it. One thing that I forgot to mention, one thing that I can disclose, Quadency, they changed their business model a little bit. They used to be a company that does like trading bots and subscriptions and so forth, these sort of things. They changed more to an exchange type model, and they launched their own utility token. And we, as early investors, of one of the earliest investors in Quadency, we were awarded a little stash of 3 million of these of these Quadency tokens. They will be issued to us in 9 tranches at 333,000 each, and we have already received the first one. So for now, we set up a MetaMask wallet, and we're just keeping that. We don't really intend to immediately sell them off. Also, partially because there simply isn't really a liquid market for these tokens yet. But it looks like the three, like at the very early numbers that we discussed in one of our recent calls, hypothetical value of these 3 million tokens is about 60K. So that's already more, we put in 100K. So we already have a little bit of a payback there. But of course, on top of that, we still have the equity stake that's valued at 100K for now. And Quadency overall seems to be doing well too. So so those were the equity values. The numbers that I ran through earlier, they add up to 1.5 million at cost. Remember, on top of that, we have a stake in CTX. That's the payment processor run by Ash Francis. Ash used to be a supervisor in a DIF 2, but decided to focus more on CTX last year, and so he did not extend his supervisor term when the year was over. And we also have a stake at CrowdNode. So CrowdNode was funded through the treasury directly. Part of that deal was that they would give a share of their company to the DIF, and they did get successfully funded 12 rounds, I believe, 12 funding rounds. And I'm currently in the process with Andreas of figuring out all the documents that they need to update their business registry to show the DIF as the rightful owner, co-owner, shareholder of CrowdNode. So CTX and CrowdNode are not included yet in this list because we didn't pay for them, right? It didn't come out of our cost budget, but these are additional stakes that we have. And then on top of that, we have, as of today, about 45,000 K and cash USD. We have a total of, now let me add this up quickly. There's our Kraken account with about 1,200 Dash, and then we have a Trezor wallet for about 2,780 Dash. So together it's about 3,000 Dash. And then we have Rune, the Thorchain token. Those Rune were acquired to provide a liquidity pool once Dash gets integrated into Thorchain, so that we can start trading and provide liquidity. That integration hasn't happened yet, so we're still sitting on Rune. Unfortunately, that is one of the investments that has not performed so well, because Rune kind of dropped and we dropped along with it. But overall, as of today, that's about another 355K worth of basically cash. Although with the caveat that about 50K of that is already sort of earmarked for paying expenses. We have our directors in the Cayman Islands that need to be paid, accountants, so there are pretty sizable year-end bills that need to be paid, and so 50K of that are pretty much set aside already. I also had a quick look at M&O Watch to see how we're doing compared to the funding that we have received so far. Looks like we got over the lifetime of the DIF about 15,339, let's say 15K in Dash, 15,000 Dash, that were, at the time they were awarded to us, worth about 2 million USD, almost exactly 2 million. As of today, after the drop of Dash value, those 15,000 Dash that we got, they would be worth about 1.07, so let's say 1 million today. And given that we have, at a very conservative valuation, about 1.8 million on our books, compared to 1 million that the Dash that we received would be worth today had we kept everything just in Dash. It basically means we already outperformed the Dash market, which probably isn't, it's not setting the bar very high. But I think it's still a good tidbit to know.
Definitely a good result for a group of guys who are learning on the fly how to manage a small fund that belongs to a computer program that nobody owns except the holders. So it's quite unique what we develop. And someone mentioned on the chat there studios about 88i. I know that 88i got a huge investment from Hedera Hashgraph as well, bumping their valuation up. I don't know the specific numbers. We haven't got their numbers to see what's their valuation. But what we can see is a bigger project also invested in a project that we invested earlier. So,
yeah. And so we have a couple of super chat questions before I dive into that. You mentioned about being a kind of a group of amateurs that have seen success, outsized from your experience in investing. And why do you think that is? If you could have like a quick idea on why do you think you've done better than, one could, I guess, assume based on your experience?
Well, I think there are multiple parts to that answer. I think Rodrigo is being very modest. It's true that none of us has a career of professional fund management behind us, but we did have people on the team that do have at least some experience in managing investments or in the financial world at large. So there was Glenn Austin, for example, who used to be a CFO of DCG, who's been always been very helpful in diving into the financial aspects of the companies that pitched at us in their balance sheet and accounting and so on. Me myself, I do have some experience in startup funding, both on the funding side as well as on the startup side receiving funding. I worked at a startup that successfully went through a funding round and got funding. But I've also been on the angel side myself through my own company. And to be honest, also we have retained Ryan Taylor as an advisor. So he has no supervisory powers, and I know there was a big controversy over him and the way he led DCG. Some people were not so happy with his performance at DCG. Be that as it may, as an advisor at the DIF and bringing in leads, he has been a great asset to us. So I have no other way to put it.
Yeah,
He did bring in.
You have to say on that also, like the diff is his idea, right?
Yeah, exactly. It is his brainchild, and he did bring in some of the companies that we ended up investing in. I believe even Craypay Ionia was one of his leads, and so and he's also been very supportive in figuring out where to take a closer look and giving us like some impulses and what to think about and whatnot. So Ryan does not have a vote in our system or in our group. He's not a supervisor, but he does take part in many of our calls, and his input is always welcome. And so yeah, and then of course you have a variety of inputs from people with very different backgrounds, and I think that can definitely work as an enrichment, as an asset also. Instead of only relying on people who are sort of developed a certain tunnel vision of how these deals should be done. We have people on the team with a wide variety of backgrounds, and that can bring in ideas and aspects that we may not have thought of this way and so that ultimately may still lead to making decisions that are favorable for the Dash network. And that's actually another point that I think that I want to point out, right? We are not in it strictly for financial gain. We are also in it to grow the utility for the Dash network. So with the investments that we're making, of course, we're not trying to come out on top financially, but we are also a bit of an impact investor, if you will, in that we're trying to grow the Dash ecosystem, and by extension maybe the larger crypto ecosystem, but specifically for Dash, of course. And so we're looking for companies that bring some sort of value to the Dash ecosystem beyond just a financial return. And for these sort of things, it's good to have people on the team who have other experiences and who have other backgrounds, or you don't look at these deals only with a magnifying glass of where's the biggest profit to be had and how much can we squeeze out of this and how much is that worth in dollars. So I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. It might be a good time to switch to get this their super chat. So first of all, after
Yeah,
one time.
let me just point it out as well, guys. Regarding the diff as well, I want to say kudos to Ryan because I think he's being extremely important in the diff, especially with complex legal aspect of contracts and reviewing deals and agreements. Because his experience was precise for us to make sure that the deals went through smooth in a way that in the future we won't have problems. And this has been extremely important on Ryan's side. So and we were very lucky to have him, after everything that happened, but to still have him part of the diff and helping us not to drop the ball and bringing more ideas, profits, and make sure that the diff was growing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to know, and especially I'm appreciative of the Ionia part of the investment because obviously there's lots of great things that Diff has done, but for me personally and people trying to use Dash as money, it's been extremely useful so far. So let's go to the super. So first off, after one time said hi from West Coast, Sylvan said hi from Quebec. Hilawe commented, and people don't understand that buying stake in companies is inherently illiquid. It's an education problem. And now for the actual question here from one time, hi one time. Is the diff going to use its rune to participate in the Maya liquidity auction to get the CACAO airdrop? If so, which tier, 30, 60, or 200 days? And that's quite a complicated question, but...
Yeah, so... I mean, yes, probably yes. But the truth is, I am not really knowledgeable enough yet about the Maya protocol. I think in preparing for this call, also, Joel, we had some exchange on Telegram, and you sent me a link, or I believe you even offered to put me in a group chat with the Maya founders. It does sound like an opportunity there, but there's no point in missing out on it, right? So I'm not sure if the Thor chain integration is still going to happen. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere from as far as I can tell. It's been languishing there, and maybe we should focus on something else. It is like it's one of those things that I talked about in the beginning. Decisions at the diff have to be made by supervisor vote. So as of today, we're meeting once a month. We could potentially meet more often if there's some urgent business to discuss, but definitely anything touching money has to go through a supervisor vote. And so we're a bit slow on the decision-making cycle. Like we did briefly talk about Maya at our last call, like about 2 weeks ago or so. But then it was like, okay, have you heard about this thing? Yeah, I've heard about it. Yeah, we should look into it. And then we kind of end the call with the understanding that we're going to do our homework and research it and look into it, and then come back again a month later and make a decision on what to do about it. As of today, we haven't made that decision yet, but as far as I'm concerned, yes, we should definitely engage with that. In which form, on which level, to be perfectly honest, I'm not even aware of what these levels are as yet. I hope I don't make myself look too stupid here, but
I think it's an option as well. I think the community got disappointed because we were never at the Rune Tor chain platform as we were expecting as fast as that, and then we got into a winter market. Things were put aside. The price of Rune dropped. Now themselves, Maya, it's a fork of Rune. So technically, we also have their tokens, but we don't have their manpower, or we didn't have the time to focus on this yet. With all that this happens, so the Rune is just sitting on a wallet. I mean, I wish we could have been added on the Tor chain.
Yeah,
it would be awesome, but we became a smaller project, and our importance was dropped, to low, and there was other projects that got priority.
Well, really quick on the whole Maya thing, and one time seems to know actually more than me, haven't gone more in detail on this, but Maya is going to launch on, I believe, March 7th for the liquidity auction. And basically, if you use whatever tokens are supported to provide liquidity during that time, then you will get a commensurate airdrop, I guess, of their native token, Cacao, with their version of Rune. And one of their trading pairs is Rune. So essentially, unfortunately, it's a very like small timeline because the 7th is coming up quite quickly. But if there could be, a meeting to discuss this, and then just move the DIF's Rune to provide liquidity for Maya, then there's the free airdrop kind of the tokens, and then it can later be removed if necessary, and then used if Thorchain changes their mind, for example. Which Dash is pretty secure in being added in early April, right? Now, as far as like the periods, that's for like lockup periods, and you get more tokens depending on how much time you commit to putting those funds and just leaving them there to provide liquidity to bootstrap the network.
Okay, so I get it. Man, it sounds like a no-brainer, right? We should definitely do that. If there's a March 7th deadline,
yes.
If there's a March 7th deadline, again, I hope I don't make myself too stupid by admitting that I wasn't aware of that. But if that's the case, as of now, basically, we have only 3 active supervisors, and we vote by majority. So basically, if 2 of us say yes, it will happen.
Yes.
So if Rodrigo and I right here and now say we're going to do it, then we're going to do it. So, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is not a supervisor meeting, and we're not going to make decisions right here and now. But it sounds like a no-brainer, and we should definitely make sure we don't miss that deadline if if that's the case.
So we had one more question from Onetime about the whole Maya thing. He says Dash is going to be added to Maya between April 1st and 10th, as in actually it'll be able to be traded and stuff. Does the DIF plan to consider providing liquidity for Dash on Maya instead of just the airdrop that we were just talking about? If so, how much? And so just to clarify with that, the first thing we were talking about is March 7th, putting the Rune that the DIF has on Maya and then getting the free tokens, I guess. The second thing is once the network is actually live, there's a liquidity pool just like Thorchain, which has the 2 assets or whatever. And basically what Onetime's asking is the DIF planning on taking some of its spare Dash that it has in Dash and providing liquidity for the Maya network in a more traditional Thorchain style liquidity pool?
Right.
Let me ask a question as well before you answer, Sven. So just so I understand, so if you have Rune, because Maya is a fork, right? So if you have Rune, you automatically have their tokens, or you have to do something to be able to get this airdrop? You don't automatically get the tokens, because if it was a fork, you automatically get it, right?
Well, I think it's a chain fork. It's not like a split of the chain. It's a code-based fork, meaning kind of like Litecoin was a fork of Bitcoin, but didn't have a Bitcoin. Bitcoin holders didn't get Litecoin. I think that is, and I have to say, there's other complicated aspects of the whole Maya thing. There's other tokens as well. There's something with like an Aztec token and stuff like that. And I have not looked that close into that stuff. But as far as I know, the way to make sure that we get an equal amount of cacao is by putting it into the liquidity auction. And the longer the lockup period, the more you get at the end of the period. Meaning, I believe the 200-day option was something like you get 1.8 times the valuation of what you put in worth of cacao, for example.
And what are the risks of us depositing our money in a smart contract and never seeing that money again?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the risk is there's always like a risk of a bug in something like that. However,
like I think Yarn project.
Yarn.
The guy made a mistake and $400 million are stuck in there forever.
Well, so the good part about this is first of all, Thorchain had a few bugs in its ChaosNet implementation back in 2021, and they've since been fixed. It's so Thorchain is pretty well worked through. I wouldn't say risk free right now, but Thorchain is pretty well worked through. So a fork of that is, barring a couple mistakes, is probably pretty good. But they did hire Halburn Security to do audits on all this, security audits. In fact, that I believe they just finished the audit of the Dash integration, and there's a couple of, because I've seen things in the incubator. There's a couple of I guess modifications they're making at the request of the security audit firm. So as far as I know, they're making everything quite secure. However, there's always risk. There's always the possibility that a very risk averse diff would be like, we'll only put half of our rune towards a liquidity auction or something like that. Which is, personally, it's not. I would probably if it was my rune, I'd probably put the whole thing in there. But obviously, I'm not an investor. I'm not as smart as you guys. Maybe do something different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So the answer to that second part, or one times second question, this would be pretty much the same as for the first one. I don't know yet. I don't know yet for sure. It sounds like it would make sense. Both of these, getting the airdrop as well as the liquidity pooling. I will have to spend a little bit more time to really fully understand how this works, what the risks are, what it's all about, and then we'll get together and pull the trigger or not. But it sounds like it would make total sense.
Yeah,
I can't really say much more about that as of today.
And
And
final,
then we yeah, please go ahead.
a final note on Thorchain before we can move on to other subjects. Thorchain strongly indicated they were going to add Dash for about almost 2 years, and then at some point they started getting wishy-washy about it, and then so as of right now there is no active plan of adding Dash, and I don't really see that changing unless something else changes, such as Thorchain really needs more liquidity, more capital going through the network, and they're like, let's just start adding nodes. Or so basically, there is always a possibility that Dash gets back on. I don't think it's going.
How do you do you know people there, or how do you know that so specifically?
Yeah. Well, let me give some details into the answer. So the Thorchain developer team, and yeah, I do know a few people there. They were planning on adding Dash all along, although not kind of a lukewarm commitment, not a strong, we're definitely, but like, yeah, I think we're going to do this. And somewhere towards the end of last year, they implemented a node voting system where the nodes could, before it was just the developers deciding everything. Then they implemented a node voting system to say, hey, which chain is going to be next? And then they voted on Haven and Binance Smart Chain and then Dash. And so now it's like, well, it's not up to us anymore. The nodes voted, and then there's some like wishy-washiness there. There's some like, and there's some decisions that are just sort of up in the air. Well, we're not going to add any more chains right now. We're going to focus on this. And then they're like, well, Binance Smart Chain is the next one. It's ready to go, but we see it's too expensive to run a node for them, and so we might want to reconsider and revote. And like, it's a little bit of a mess. And so. The good thing, I guess, about providing liquidity for the Maya launch, and to a lesser extent, but still, after the launch, is the rune is still there. And if at some point Thorchain says, hey, we're going to add you guys, and you're like, oh, and you just get all the liquidity from Maya and just put it in there, and then, kind of work for that. But
all right.
So that's kind of the final notice on that.
It sounds good, and I agree on this strategy. The only thing is the risk of us putting the diff rune into some smart contract and never seeing that money again because of whatever reason will come up.
Well,
so
yeah.
there's a risk involved,
And to be fair,
then because then it goes from investing to maybe gambling on a maybe. Let's see if those guys, I don't know. It's just my personal opinion. But that's something that we have to, sit down with a bunch of people, the new supervisors, see the plan, the pros and cons. And all this will take 2-3 weeks it will take 2-3 months because now we're having monthly meetings. So just to give you an idea of how we operate, because we're volunteers, we are doing as much as we can with the time we have for a job that we care because we love, not because we get paid, right? Because I mean, if you don't love Dash to be working as we did or the diff, I mean, what other reason are we doing it?
Of course. Yeah.
Right?
It to just.
I mean, so for perspective, we have 15,500 rune, which as of today are worth about 29,000 US dollars. So, I mean, it's a sizable amount of money, but in the grand scheme of things for the diff, it's not like a, you know, it's not a huge amount. So
yeah.
yeah, I think like Rodrigo said, we should go back and discuss what to do with it, and if the risk is worth it or not, to put these 29K to use. We'll discuss it and we'll come to a decision. Hopefully faster than 2 to 3 months. I mean, we can sometimes also make decisions by email, or we can sometimes schedule calls outside of the monthly cycle. I suspect, especially now that we have to bring in the new supervisors, we will probably end up meeting a little bit more often just to onboard them and to welcome them to the team. So, and it sounds like with their deadlines anyway, March 7, I took down, and what was it, April 8. So I took down some notes, and we'll work towards that.
Yeah, I should also just leave a last note about like the risk profile. The rune that the diff bought was intended for the same risk profile, as in to provide liquidity on the Thorchain smart contract, which has that. Except the difference, though, is with that original liquidity, that increased, that had actually more of a risk because of impermanent loss. Because what would happen with the rune being provided for liquidity on Thorchain would mean if there's price fluctuations versus the other assets, you could actually have less rune at the end of the day, possibly, or more. Whereas with the Maya thing, it's just putting it there, and there's no fluctuation risk during the original auction. But then, of course, even though it's basically the same as Thorchain, it's also a fork, and there's always that extra little bit of risk of like, oh, because it's a fork of something stable doesn't mean it's necessarily as stable, even though it's audited. So, yeah, a lot of things to think about, right?
Right.
So, first off, this is probably a one-word answer kind of a question. Was, does the diff have enough liquid assets to pursue a New York bit license for Dash?
No. That's the one-word answer. No.
What do we do with a bit license? What we would do with that?
Well,
running an exchange today, you have to be an insane person to want it to be a CEO of an exchange. Why would we want to do that?
I'm like, yeah, man, I'm not even sure if that. I mean, first of all, I know for a fact that getting a bit license is incredibly difficult and incredibly expensive. This is way beyond the reach of what we could do as a diff. The other thing is that I'm not even sure that would even apply to that. Like we as the diff would not apply to.
We will have to become an exchange and run an exchange. I don't want to do that.
Exactly, right? So we I mean, as far as I understand, you can acquire a bit license as a business. Bit licenses are not issued to the cryptocurrency itself. So who in the Dash ecosystem would acquire that bit license on behalf of Dash? Certainly not the diff. Like, what would we do with it? We are not an exchange. We are not going to become an exchange. And I may be wrong on that point, but as far as I know, you can't have a bit license for a an entity like Dash or like Bitcoin itself or like Dash itself. It's always for a company.
So from my understanding, and this is where it gets tricky, but while you can't have a bit license for a crypto itself, the bit license regulators do have a wait list of assets, and to get on that whitelist of assets, it's I guess shorthand is Dash can get a bit license, even though it's it's more nuanced than that, right? But there
Yeah.
is from my understanding, there is a possibility to hire a law firm and go and negotiate with the regulators and basically get Dash whitelisted there. There's a possibility, but it doesn't seem like a investment type of a thing. It doesn't seem like it's a diff because there's no company, there's no equity. It doesn't seem like maybe that'd be like a Dash Trust thing plus a giant budget proposal or something. But yeah, it doesn't
I
seem
would
like
have
a
to.
diff thing.
I would have to look into what that whitelisting even means. But again, from what I've read about bit licenses so far, the cost of getting them, the legal expenses and the filing fees and everything that's involved, we're talking of expenses in the millions, and that's like in the near future, not remotely in the books for the diff. So short answer.
Yeah. So before we go to the next question, we had another comment from Onetime about it says having more Dash liquidity on Maya when Dash is first added would be beneficial. Yes, I agree, and I'm going to, with the penny, the couple duffs that I have, help out with that too. So, next one here is, can the diff expect to realistically function on its own without additional treasury funds at some point? And this was some kind of idea bandied about. The idea of the diff has changed over the years, but some idea would be that the treasury would give seed funding to the diff, and the diff would end up making enough money through its investments to then have more capital to then reinvest, and at some point there would be no more treasury proposals, and then it would just continue to grow. So where are we with that, or is that possible?
I mean, I think you kind of get the answer already if you listen to what my previous answers. First of all, we kind of already doing that, right? We stopped asking for funding. We stopped posting funding proposals sometime mid last year, and I talked earlier about a financing event that is happening with one of our portfolio companies that values our investment in that company at roughly 4 times what we paid in.
Yeah.
If that company continues to develop well, there would potentially be an exit event in the future. Exit event meaning we're exiting this investment, we're getting paid out, we're getting our money back, which at that point would hopefully be for even more than 4x, like 4 times what we paid in. So we're honestly we're holding out for anything between 5 to 10x, and if that happens, yes, we would have enough funding to pursue future investments on our own. Like I said earlier, it would validate the whole diff strategy of, like you just described, getting seed funding from the treasury, and then at some point to start running on our own. But we also talked about earlier that these are all quite long-term investments, and you have to be patient. And so keep watching the space, keep watching our blog. I will write, I put the numbers that I ran you guys through into a blog post you'll see coming up in the next few days, and keep an eye out. The stuff that I just kind of hinted at without being able to be specific, we might be able to be more specific a few months down the road when things are signed and everything is done and dusted, and then I think it will become a lot clearer of what we're talking about, and people can make up their own mind of what they think the prospects are of the diff operating on its own. I think the prospects for that are pretty good. So
yeah,
that's pretty much
good
it.
to hear. there's a little bit of a side, I guess, question in there about it kind of came up with with the concept of divesting, and then also the mention of Valkyrie in particular. So the DIF obviously has a sort of dual mission. One is to grow the investment that the Dash treasury gives it, and the other is to grow the Dash ecosystem through strategic investments and partnerships. Now, obviously, so for example, Ionia, from my understanding, has done quite well. However, because it's so integral to the Dash ecosystem, there's also a great incentive to keep that investment, right? To kind of keep that going. And then on the other hand, say you have something like Valkyrie, which was, lined up to be very valuable to the Dash ecosystem. And now, even though, now it's purely an investment. It's not really in the Dash ecosystem and probably won't be. So does the DIF have any kind of a general strategy on divesting from companies and projects that are profitable but no longer support that secondary mission?
Yeah, short answer, no. We do not have a well-defined strategy. To be perfectly honest, we do not have a well-defined and spelled out strategy for either investing nor for divesting. And for investing, I mean what you just described, the two main goals, basically make money and grow utility for the Dash ecosystem. Those two goals are clear. But beyond that, we do not have a really well-defined investment thesis where the things are spelled out in much more detail. It's something that I've been meaning to do, and it should be done. I hope that now with the two new supervisors coming on board, we'll finally get around to actually doing that and to have a more defined strategy, which then will also include rules or thoughts on how and when to divest in companies. So when the Valkyrie thing happened, of course, we were just as disappointed as most of us, all of us, when they decided to close down the Valkyrie Dash Trust. I put a lot of effort into keeping it alive. Actually, I got a bit of a reprieve. Like they postponed the closure date by a month or 2 months or something to give us a chance to fill in. The DIF decided to put our Dash into it, but our funds alone wouldn't have been enough. Some community members would have had to step in. Nobody really did. And so the Dash Trust ultimately died, which was a bit sad for me because I personally put a lot of effort into trying to keep it alive. So, but that aside, now, of course, we were facing a situation of what to do about Valkyrie. Of course, some of us were just as bitter as some of our community members, I'm sure. Says, yeah, well, screw those guys and let's get out. And so, but, once you calm down a little bit and put these emotions aside and you look at it from a more rational standpoint, like here we are already invested in it. We own those shares. All the legal fees for it are paid, and we are on the books. Divesting isn't as simple as it sounds at first, because as I mentioned earlier, there is no liquid market for these things. You can't just go to a stock market and sell a bunch of Valkyrie shares. You have to find a buyer for it, a private buyer. So now, yes, we did get the offer from the Valkyrie CEO directly, who said she would have a buyer who would be willing to take over our shares, or was it even just the company would buy it back themselves? But the valuation was really bad. And knowing what Valkyrie was working on their products strategy, their lineup, and their growth trajectory overall, since they have other products outside of the Dash Trust that seem to have done quite well, we decided that it wouldn't make sense just out of spite to offload that investment and forego a much bigger potential upside. So we decided to stay in it. That's not to say that we're going to stay in it forever. if another more favorable opportunity comes along to divest those shares, we may. We're not married to it either. But so far, that opportunity hasn't really arisen, right? The buyback offer was basically more or less at cost, right? We would have gotten
Yeah,
our money back out, uh, barely a little, like hardly any more than that, and we felt that's
it's
such
not
a
worth
low
it.
ball offer was not worth entertaining. And so yeah, we're looking at how Valkyrie is doing. If they do follow-up financing rounds with other investors, there may be an opportunity to get bought out. There may be an exit opportunity for us at more favorable terms. Uh, that's for that example. Circling back, overall strategy, we will have to define it. We should have that, and we'll be working on it with the new supervisors.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, regarding some what was mentioned earlier about paid employees and things of the diff, do you think that in the future it could be useful for either supervisors or investment managers, etc., to be hired employees of the diff at some point?
Well, um, I think the way the structure was originally envisioned is a good structure. That is, supervisors are volunteers, and they don't really have a financial incentive one way or another,
Mm-hmm.
but they only supervise. Like supervisors would meet maybe once a month, maybe even just once a quarter for like a quarterly update and look how things are going. So the time commitment for the supervisors would be relatively minimal. And then you would have paid employees. Yeah, you would have paid fund managers or professionals who have more experience than we do, and who have, most importantly, have more time.
Mm-hmm.
Who's, it would be their job to do due diligence and deal sourcing and look at each of these investment opportunities with a magnifying glass to uncover the hidden traps and whatnot. And uh, we haven't been able to do that. In the long term, if we manage to pull off some major exits and we suddenly find ourselves sitting on $10 million or something, I would say, my personal opinion, and remember, I'm one of six, but my
Mm-hmm.
personal opinion is, yeah, well, let's revisit that. Like, let's look again into hiring people and having a more professional structure with real professionals, paid professionals, uh, to basically follow the original structure as it was intended, and put the supervisors back into supervising,
Mm-hmm.
and not have us manage the day-to-day operations. It's been hard for us, right? We are doing things as supervisors now that we were never meant to do. Like I said in the beginning, you do websites, setting up election, putting funding proposals out. All this kind of maintenance work is very time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And but again, it's not the job that supervisors should be doing. So that's my opinion. Rodrigo,
Yeah.
what do you think?
For example, one of the things that I did, either because of the Dash proposal from Dash Brazil, or because I was doing some project for someone, but I was going to several events. As you guys know, I do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
events, and there's a lot of business opportunity. But once I was there on my own, I'm like, oh, this is good for diff. This could be great for diff. Your radar is always on, but we don't. As a supervisor, for example, if there's a pay position, I think that'll be extremely important to have a someone that goes to events to
Mm-hmm.
hunt for possibilities. But this that there's cost. There's hotels, travel. At least pay for the cost of the guy doing this. So that's a possible position once we have money flowing in, and we can create little pay positions. We need definitely a secretary. We need
Mm-hmm.
someone to do the little paperwork, because paperwork sucks. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to do that, and it takes a long time. Yeah, nobody wants to do paperwork. It's awful. dealing with
Mm-hmm.
long PDFs and legal terms. I hate it. I don't
Yeah.
do it. So but we need to pay someone to do that. Some people enjoy it. I think it sucks. eh, you
Who
know,
the hell enjoys
but
that?
someone needs to do, because in the end of the year we
Mm.
have to come up with a bunch of numbers, and we cannot have a little, oh yeah, oh shit guys, we miscount three numbers here, three zeros. We can't do that. But once we do it on our spare times, so we need to pay someone to do this, and say, hey, please take a look on those numbers, see if everything matches. English spelling, little things like this that would makes us legit as a organized little entity, floating around as a fund in this new era. So we need some certain paid position, and we definitely need funds for that. So there's several positions we can create, fill, and develop in order to grow. Otherwise, we'll just keep, maybe this will work, maybe that's, oh, this guy had an idea. So if we don't bring in money to pay for development, we're not gonna grow as fast as we want.
Right.
Yeah, that
So
makes
let's
sense.
hope the Dash price develops more. The way it has in the last few weeks. It's been a little bit more encouraging that we finally got out of that 40-50 dollar uh,
Range.
range. So let's hope that momentum keeps going a little bit. So now it looks like we're kind of stalling at a $70 mark, more or less. We would have to get significantly higher before we could seriously look into having funding proposals for creating paid positions, at least not for full-time paid positions. Maybe we can discuss something like part-time, but then again, I'm
Mm.
not sure how in reality that would work out. Could you have somebody part-time? Could you have a freelancer for this or that? I mean, these are all possibilities. uh, Throughout the last year with the Dash price where it was, even that was not even in the books. So going forward, let's see how the price develops. Let's see how our funding situation develops. I would love it to have more stable, more reliable support, because if you pay people, then you can also hold them responsible, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
also say, look, here's your here's your deadline, get it done. So right now, it's like, as we've seen with the election, it's like, well, we'll do it when we get to it. And here we
Yeah.
are, half a year later, we finally got
Get
across
to
the
it.
finish line. So, but that's not really the way I would want to operate.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be a little more nimble than that, and I think professional paid employees would be the way to do that.
So let's talk hedging. So I do remember one, I guess, feature of the diff that was mentioned was the ability to hedge against bull and bear markets. And I do remember in the past with Voltoro, for example, there was some hedging action into buying gold and things like that. So
Right.
how much thought has the diff given to you hedging via more liquid assets than these long-term investments? Meaning, let's just say when you it's pretty, yeah, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's relatively doable to guess when a market is close to a top. Or it's somewhere around. It's like it's in the high season, and it's very easy to see when it's kind of in the low season, and to just sort of move Dash into something like, I don't know if USD is even a good choice, but like something like
Right.
that in the high season, and then in the low season, kind of buy back to sort of hedge
Right.
back and
I mean,
forth.
it sounds very much like a question that I just answered on the forum, I believe it was, where somebody
Mm-hmm.
was asking about, or was it on Dash Central? I forgot. So somewhere I wrote an answer to that already, and the answer basically circles back to the same points we've already discussed. I mean, you're saying now it's very easy to guess when the market is at the top and when it's at the bottom. I would politely disagree. I think it's not as easy to try and game the market or try to play the market. Um, it would require somebody to follow it day by day or at least week by week. And so far, we just haven't had the manpower to do that. So that's really the main reason why we're not engaging in active trading of Dash against fiat, or much less Dash against other coins. After all, we are the Dash Investment Foundation, not the some other coin
I
investment
remember
foundation.
someone suggested one time we should buy Dogecoin.
Yeah, exactly, right. We are
How
not the
how
Doge
serious was
investment.
that?
I have no idea. I haven't actually even heard that, but yeah, maybe it was jokingly mentioned somewhere in Discord. I have no idea, but uh, so there's the time component. We are not this organization, like I said in the very beginning, where we have a bunch of guys in a trading room hunched over a monitor and looking at the charts every day and following up and down what to buy, sell, this, that. We don't do that. We don't have the capacity to do that. I have a family here. I have my own business to run. My kids are gonna come home in a couple minutes probably, and it's gonna get loud and noisy in here. So we can do that from a time perspective. We don't have paid employees. There's that one again. We don't have somebody who is paid to do that either. We can't afford somebody to do that. And the other thing is, as long as it's just us supervisors dealing with financial decisions, there's a governance component to that answer. Meaning any financial decision that we're making has to go through a supervisor vote. That's by our constitution. That's something you can't just simply overrule. So we're meeting, in good times once a week, now once a month, but I think even once a week is probably too slow for the fickle crypto market. So to make buy and sell decisions,
For me, it's basically gambling. We're gonna take people's money, and then am I gonna open an account on Binance? I'm gonna be trading my strategy, or Sven's strategy, or should we throw this to the new supervisors that are coming? Do they know trading? That's what it is. Basically gambling. We can't do that.
Yeah,
in the name of an institution. And then reports, hey, by the way, remember the 500,000 we got? Yeah, well, we kind of lost. We thought the market was gonna go up, it went down. So there's your report. And then they're like, well, where's the wallet? I want to see this. I want to report which was the transaction. Did you really lose?
Can you imagine?
It doesn't work.
Can you imagine?
We'll never do that at the DIF.
Can you imagine the outcry at the community? Like, I don't want to be the one going to the community on Discord or in one of these podcasts, say, hey guys,
Shiba
like
Inu did not perform as
yeah, Shiba Inu, oh man, Shiba.
Like, can you imagine? Like, oh my God, no. Like that's why we're called the Dash Investment Foundation. We are not called the DTF. We are called the DIF.
The Dash Gambling Foundation.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There should be a competing organization. Maybe I'll start it, called the DSF,
well, feel free,
the Dash Speculative Foundation, and then start with just 10 Dash and just see what we can do with that, and be like, hey, guess what? Several cycles later, it's turned into like 3,000 Dash. No, but
see that interestingly, I know there are some very outspoken members in our community.
Oh, really? I had not noticed.
who some of whom seem to be successful traders. At least that's how they portray themselves. I don't really know for sure, but and some of these people were approached if they would be interested in joining the DIF and helping us out, and maybe giving some of their input, and maybe even pursuing a somewhat more trading-based investment strategy. None of these people were willing to commit the time and to become supervisors. As you guys know, we had fewer candidates for the supervisor election than there are actual slots available. So there you see, it is a significant time investment, and if in doubt, people don't want to throw their hat in the ring. And so
and let me, and people might get angry, but look at the results of the elections. Nobody wanted to participate. People complain. I didn't make the votes. People rather not vote for me, who wants to spend the free time to have anybody or volunteer themselves. People roll down out with the old, bring the new, but they don't really. So it's slowly people are just they want it to happen, but they don't want to make it happen.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very simple to criticize. Very simple to say, hey, I want a result, but look how many years the diff has been on the making, and we managed to, by just investing, not even selling it, with a group of small guys, we almost doubled the investment.
Right.
And in 3 to 5 years, we gotta be on the figures of millions. And people are like, well, and you guys didn't even want to participate, and that's the results we are right now.
Right.
Even if we stop the diff today and we stay with what we are, all of those companies that we put a little bit of money are growing successfully,
Yeah.
right? All of them, maybe one or two, and all we need is one of them to go to the moon, and we can get it, a couple $1 million in return, and then say, hey, what we do with this now? And then let's see the guys coming. Oh, I want to be a supervisor, and then I want to go do this. I want to work for the diff.
Of course.
Well,
So
work
far,
now. I want to see
I-
you guys now. It's
Yeah.
slowly dying. It's slowly dying of participation, and people are complaining. So that's the reality. There you
Yeah,
have it.
I have personally approached multiple people that I thought would be a good fit or might have an interest, where people where I know that their professional background would match, and no, they decided that they don't want to be supervisors. They didn't want to put their name in the pot. So there's that. So long answer, or a short answer, we do not have the manpower, and we do not have, to be honest, not the willingness as of today.
I
And
mean,
not we don't have to. We
making a
don't,
joke. Let's just picture this. Ryan did all what he did, and being extremely professional and legal aspect at the diff, at the DCG. But imagine Ryan giving a diff report of losing money investing on Shiba Inu.
yeah, exactly, right.
We have,
Look what they did with him being so professional. Can you imagine if we take this approach?
Yeah.
It will automatically explode the whole thing. So it's some members of the community are not ready to handle the transformation that's happening. And they just want to see immediate results, because in crypto everybody got used to make fast returns. And a majority of people, they don't understand what is to build something that it can break it. But unfortunately, some people cannot see that yet, or majority of them.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's end with this last super chat we got from Nerdmoney. Hi, Nerdmoney. It says, I'm not sure if this has been mentioned before. Does the diff have a mission statement? It seems to me the purpose of the diff is not to make money, but to invest in companies that support the Dash ecosystem. So we kind of went over, we alluded to a lot of this, but might just be good to finish the podcast by just saying, like, what is the diff's mission statement?
Before we finish that, Sven, so I want you to finish with the mission statement. I want to say something. Let's say that, the objective is not make money, is to expand the Dash ecosystem, right? To expand the Dash blockchain. So let's say we invest money at this 88i insurance company or anything else, and they're ready to rock and roll. And their biz dev calls the DCG and say, hey, I need to create stablecoin smart contract, and I need to have some data storage. Where's the documentation to make this run? I need it right now. It's not ready. We cannot do any of those things with the Dash blockchain at the moment.
Yeah.
We cannot run smart contracts. We cannot run stable coins. We cannot run NFTs. What can we do with the Dash blockchain? We can send Dash and we can receive Dash. I'm sorry, but that's the reality for the past 5 years. So how am I going to expand and tell a company, come build to us, if we cannot run ourselves this? So technically, mechanically, we cannot hit the gas pedal because our engine is not there yet.
Yeah, it's 88i is a good example, right? It's a Brazilian company. Some of our listeners may not be that familiar with it, but they provide micro insurance for things like individual Uber rides or individual deliveries that somebody runs somewhere. things like that. And part of our investment deal for them was their commitment to build on top of Dash platform. So on top of Dash platform,
So
not the Dash payment network. I don't think I
Hedera,
need to
Hedera
talk any
Hash,
further, right?
yeah.
So Dash platform, we're
So,
seeing the
and the reality is Hedera Hash Graph put more money into this company because they're building over there. Because what can we build at Dash? So we are stuck in time. We're 5 years behind schedule. Technically, I don't know what's happening. I'm too dumb to understand coding. I have to rely what people tell me. But I tell people like in Brazil, for example, when they tell me, "Hey, what's happening?" I'm like, "Oh, did you hear what happened to Dash?" I'm like, "Nothing, nothing. Got forgotten." There's no articles about Masternode. Masternode, the word Masternode died about 2-3 years ago. I haven't heard a single article about Masternode. There was a website, Masternode bust, disappear. So we follow behind schedule several years. We can't build anything on the top of the blockchain yet. I don't know. There's several difficulties. I'm sure the guys are going crazy. And it is hard. I don't understand the complexity, but we are falling behind. So how can we attract companies to build in the
yeah. I
blockchain
mean,
if they're not ready to be built?
I personally don't see it quite as bleak yet. But also remember the question was actually about a mission statement, right? We kind of drifted away from that a little bit. It is a good example about an investment we made specifically trying to increase transaction count and bringing value to the ecosystem. The commitment to building on Dash platform still stands, but of course it's being held up by our delivery schedule. Now, that aside, there is a mission statement which has been shared also in one of our earlier kind of Dash quarterly calls or quarterly reports. Some of those videos are still out there. The DIF used to do like quarterly reports in a video format, and the mission statement was always featured in there. For me, that mission statement was a bit wordy. Basically stated exactly what we've been talking about, right? Bring in a financial return, but also grow the Dash ecosystem, bring value to the ecosystem, bring utility to the Dash ecosystem. We should reformulate it and make it a lot more snappy and easy to remember. That's something that we will pick up again once the 2 new supervisors are on board. And yeah, that's all I have to say to that one. We should have a better mission statement. I remember starting kind of working on it and thinking it over, how we can condense that long wordy mission statement to something more, more precise. Kind of drifted away then when we got sidetracked with other things, but we will pick it up again now that the new guys are about to come on board.
Absolutely. Well, where could people find and follow you guys personally? And the DIF's progress, I should say, as well.
Personally, I'm most active on Telegram. We have a Telegram group chat. It's like sort of this semi-official group chat. So I'm one of the moderators on there. Telegram is also the platform I privately use most frequently for instant messaging and whatnot. So that's the easiest to reach me there at TELSR. Tel for Telegram and the initials of my full name. I do have a Twitter account. I do have although I'm not really active on Twitter, very rarely, especially now that Elon Musk took over, kind of lost interest there a little bit. I'm occasionally active on Reddit. The handles on where to find me are all listed on my supervisor election application on Dash Central. So go there, look up the proposal under my name, and you'll find my handles. And I think the same is true for all the other guys, including Rodrigo. Rodrigo, you can speak for yourself.
I don't really tweet much. I think I'll probably scare people if I tweet what I think. But I do retweet a lot of things. But you can actually contact me on Twitter. I wrote down there. I misspelled. It was Rodrix Rigito, but it's with D. It's Rodrix Digital. But just reach me out on Twitter, guys.
Well, fun stuff. Well, thanks very much for being on. Seems like a good place to wrap this thing up. Uh, I'm already scheduling out the next several months Dash podcast, so it should be some good stuff coming up. Usually after the Dash podcast, we have the after party, which is where we all hang out and in like a group Jitsi call, just like this, but not recorded broadcast. The after party is not going to be the immediate after party because it's usually in the evening, U.S. time, and then obviously more in the evening Europe time, right? But so that'll probably be what I would say 4 or 5 hours from now. But just ask around the Dash channels whenever you're watching this if that's happening, and we'll get you into the after party. And also, usually this is right after my regular news podcast. And this time it's before, but the one and only Chuck Williams is going to be on in a few hours. So if you want to watch, say hi to Chuck, go tune back in. But anyway, thanks everyone. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you guys either in about 3 hours for that one, or I'll see you guys in about 4 hours for the after party, or I'll just see you guys next month. And thanks very much. And have a
Sounds
great
good.
weekend, guys.
Bye, guys.
You
Thank
too.
you.